you're tuned in, whether it's on the radio, on Twitch, on YouTube, on one of our wonderful social platforms. Thank you for joining us here on the Vintage House Show. I'm the host of The Spotlight, and I'm here with Lauren.
What up, fam? It's Lauren Lowry, the executive producer of the Vintage House Show, and we are so pleased to have Keys and Crates, a Toronto collective that is going to be performing in Chicago at the Sound Bar, November the 18th. We are so lucky to have them on in our virtual studio to talk a little bit about their show and who they are and sort of what their history is in the hip hop, house music, trap game. So who we have here on the cloud with us right now is David Matisse, who goes by Matisse, and we have Gregory Dawson, who goes by Junior Flow, and they are two of the three team members in Keys and Crates. Welcome to the Vintage House Show, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
So talk to us quickly, Keys and Crates. Who came up with that name? And talk to us a little bit about the Toronto house music scene or the Toronto music scene.
The name came about. We were initially, before our third member even came in, Matisse and I got together and wanted to form. We started jamming and we wanted to form this collective, and we knew we wanted to bring a third person in. And we kind of just spitballed a bunch of names, and Keys and Crates was like one of them, and it felt catchy and true to the vibe at the time, because we really started not really as even producers, but as kind of almost like a hip hop cover band. So it was like me on turntables. I have like a scratch DJ kind of background. And Matisse has like a heavy classical keys and R&B keys background. So we started off as this kind of cover band. Keys and Crates felt like a catchy name, and we later sort of evolved into producers, and that's when we eventually started making trap and stuff like that. We became this dance band that was making instrumental kind of hip hop influenced trap beats and touring like that. That's kind of how we started. The Toronto music scene and house scene has always been super strong. I mean, we're like a big city, so everything kind of comes through here. Our experience with house was different. Matisse grew up outside of the city, in London, Ontario. I grew up closer to the city. I was coming into the city a lot. When in the 90s, I was buying hip hop records and stuff, because I was a budding scratch DJ. And I got exposed to house music through the record stores and stuff like that. So I would hear a lot of 90s stuff playing at the time, because that was more my age group, me hearing stuff in the 90s. So I was hearing a lot of New York stuff, like Armand Van Helden, Strictly stuff all off the Strictly Rhythm label and stuff like that. So that stuff was really in the background for me, the backdrop. I loved that music, and I ended up kind of buying a lot of it just incidentally when I was buying hip hop records. But I never, I never made it until the last few years, really. It was just something that I've always loved, and it's been part of music that I've loved, along with a lot of other music that I've loved. Matisse, I think, was exposed to house more through a lot of mainstream media stuff. We had a show here called Electric Circus, which is kind of it's kind of like a Soul Train, but it's it was more 90s dance driven. So they would bring in a lot of international house DJs, and they would do sets, and then they would show music videos of the current dance stuff that was going on. And I was totally, anybody that lived in Toronto was kind of influenced or exposed to that. That was very much happening while the underground house stuff was happening, when the rave scene was developing here. That was somebody would come in to play a club or a rave, and they would if they were really big, they would end up doing a set on Electric Circus. So that was kind of all happening, and we were getting exposed to that. And that was just part of our musical upbringing. I think both Matisse and I were both more into hip hop and R&B in the 90s. That was our roots. And but we were, exposed to house just through being around. It was almost unavoidable in a great way. And there was clubs here for it. There was a club called Roxy Blue that was more, that leaned more to like, and this was more like late 90s, early 2000s, that leaned more towards like soulful house, like I guess like the Naked Music era of stuff, like Blue Six and all that kind of stuff. But then like the 90s stuff was always banging on, you know, in clubs like Industry and System Sound Bar here, and like Government and RPM when it was called RPM. Like, so there's just like a huge lineage of like clubs here that were bringing international talent in. And then we had our own like amazing DJs here, like guys like Peter and Tyrone, or like Kenny Glasgow that went on to become art department with his partner. And there's so many. My boy Nathan Barato, who's he was somebody that was like a house DJ that was working in the record stores at the time, and he was like very senior to me. But he was always like, a lot of the record store DJs were quite snobby, especially the house guys, frankly. And he was
Same here
always
in
like very,
Chicago. They thought they were everything, by the way. But almost all of them got their start working in the what we call now sort of our legendary record store. So I get it. I get it.
yeah, the record store culture is, it's like, you know, it's got its own like thing to it, right? It's a
Mhm.
little edgy and it's a little snobby and whatever. But I remember my boy Nathan always was like very welcoming to me. And we became friends like years later, because we just ran into each other at the airport because we were both going on tour. And he's super successful now, you know, playing around the world as like a house DJ and like producer as well. He's like a great producer, and he's done releases with like Jamie Jones and all these like huge people and stuff. So like, yeah, there's tons of people here, like local cats that have always been killing it. And yeah, it's just it's in general, Toronto's always had a very healthy music scene in general. Like we had the rave scene, and we've had always had a strong like rap scene. And it's just a very, it's healthy. We get everything that New York gets, you know, because we're so close, I think, from a touring perspective. So we're quite spoiled here.
Wow. Matisse, anything to add to that?
I mean, I think he pretty much summed it up, you know. Yeah, Toronto's always been around, like right there with all the music that's come up from New York. And you know, I did grow up in a smaller town, but we got exposed to it because right next to the big room in the hip hop rooms, there'd be this little small room playing house later on at night. And I would get enticed in there because there was girls in there, and I'd go into that room and hear the house music playing and dance music and be just kind of enthralled by a whole different culture. And you know, and then also back then it was, you know, you would get those big flyers that would talk about a big party out in the middle of somewhere that you had to call a number. And you know, the parties back then were so underground and not really part of the mainstream. So I think I found them through just dating a couple girls who were into that scene and would tell me that they were going to these mysterious parties out in the middle of nowhere. And I remember being like, oh, what is this? This is crazy. So between that and the show Electric Circus that was on our music station called Much Music, which was like the MTV of Canada, you know, they would have their weekly show of people dancing in the middle of in this club down in the Much Music station on Friday nights. And everyone in my town, you know, all the surrounding towns, we'd watch these shows with awe of this big city and these colorful people dancing to these strange sounds from Europe and these underground house records and stuff. So Greg was right. Like you're just around it. Toronto was a melting pot of all types of music, and house was always around, right around hip hop was in the 90s.
Yeah, I really like how you mentioned like you would follow the girls. Like I feel like all the cool girls party to house music, and so like you you knew what you were doing there, you know what I mean? And I think house is a very like social thing too. It has a way of really bringing people together, whether you like it or not. It's just so different, or you love it and then you just bond over the fact that you can't stop moving for whatever reason.
Well, it's funny you say that too, because it was such a contrast to the hip hop era at that time too, right? Because you go into clubs and people are kind of like a bit jaded and guarded and frowning, a bit like more like, you know, get out of my way and stuff. And then you go into this house room, everyone's like, hey, come on in, let me hold you, let me hug you. My name is so and so. You want to come with my friends? And here's this little
Yeah.
bracelet. And I've got these colors. And you're almost like, whoa, 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 like,
Yeah.
yo, back up. And then so you know, it's such an embracing culture of love that coming from hip hop and stuff like that in the 90s, you couldn't help but notice the difference in energy the minute you walked in. And at that time, as a straight male, I just didn't really even know how to really understand it. But I
Yeah.
knew that the energy was good. And I
Mhm.
was kind of almost envious of the people who did fully understand it and fully immerse in it, because they just felt like they're on a level, like the happiness they got from dancing was different from the mean mugging that we got from moving to our beats, you know. So yeah.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
I mean, if we fast forward to today, I mean, that is your music now to some people. They are on the dance floor listening to this new album, which I was listening to as I was getting ready to, for the interview. I want to talk and hear a little bit more about intention. So, first, my question is, what is some of the inspiration behind some of the things you did this time around? How does this feel different from some of the music y'all first started off with when you first met and over the years? How is intention, fresh and new for you?
Well, we jumped full into the house music realm. Like we've never done that before. We flirted with it. Even like from when we were a first, like a cover band, we would like bring house stuff into the sets as well. But when we started to produce, it was more, we were attracted to making these like instrumental trap beats because it just felt really fun and fresh at the time, and it felt like just new. And we did that for a while, and eventually it felt like the music became more aggressive than fun and inclusive. And that's when we started to pivot to other stuff, and we started dabbling in house, and we started dabbling in like kind of these 110 Afrobeat kind of things, and we were kind of finding ourselves.
You were
And
speeding it up a little bit, just little by little, you were speeding it up.
100%. And it was a lot of that. It was like not as deliberate of like we weren't like we want to make a house album. Like all of a sudden it was kind of this gradual thing that happened, and it really did kind of start in the 105 to 110 range, and we were kind of playing that stuff and making that stuff, and we're like, this is cool, it feels like a stomp, and we like this groove, and and I think the sidebar to this is like, I think a lot of the stuff that made us arrive at house was like how we enjoy people moving to the music. You know what I mean? Like it was like the result, the vibe in the place. And is it something that we want to be a part of? And I think the 110 stuff, we were liking it, but sometimes it would feel a little slow for us. Like I think it would be cool at some parts of the night, but I don't think we wanted to play like a whole night of 110. So we gradually started speeding up, you know what I mean? And once we ended up in the kind of between 120 and 130, it started feeling like really good, or like a very sustainable, like kind of tempo for us, with like a lot of grooves that we could explore. And naturally, those grooves became house grooves. And I think like we gravitated towards a lot of stuff that's influenced by like a lot of 90s house, because that's like what was going on, like Armin van Helden was what was going on, and like the syncopated, like layered drum loops and stuff like that whole thing. And then also like us liking, there's stuff being on the stuff that sounds a little bit like more UK garage stuff is like, we like stuff like that too, because again, it sort of reminds us of Armin van Helden kind of stuff, but just a little bit faster. So like a lot of stuff to us is like, it doesn't feel like that much of a reach. It's sort of like, oh, well, there's just like a few beats per minute faster. It's kind of the same groove, but it's few beats per minute faster. So like, let's try making that. And then, it's like, oh, it feels very different here. And like, this is a whole different energy pocket. And you start to learn all the different sort of like, like micro energy pockets that you can go within house music, and all the different grooves. And
House is
from
so vast. It really
it's
is.
so vast. Yeah, it's so vast, and the way people move to it, like we'll play more Afro-y stuff like the What Girls Do, and we'll play a lot of stuff around that. And the way that people move to that is different from the way they move to more like, kind of jackin' stuff. Not jackin' as in maybe I'm not saying it the right way if you're a Chicago person, but when I say jacket, I just mean that like 909 aggressive hat, and it's driving forward, which to me is almost like more some New York stuff, the way I've kind of just been raised, probably saying the wrong thing. But yeah, so we just kind of got obsessed with learning how to make music within the parameters of the genre, because we ended up there and we just realized it's like, wow, there's so much space to make all kinds of different records here, whether they be like really heady club records or like more pop leaning records, and then records at different speeds and tempos and grooves, different levels of like melodicness to more being atonal. Like, yeah, so we just kind of like had, like once we ended up in that playground, we just had a lot of fun playing, and the album kind of happened quite organically.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought What Girls Do because that was my track. I'm like, there is something so global sounding about this. And in this throughout this album, I mean, you touched, I'm glad you brought up this idea around different energy pockets because the album is a very fluid and diverse range of house music sounds. I mean,
Yeah,
different tracks on here can be played in different countries seamlessly. And
yeah.
I think that's wonderful. Matisse, I want to hear more about, your energy around this album.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it came from, you know, we played so many shows as a band and as a DJs and stuff that you start to create as a producer just to make music to fit the sound check of the crowd you're around, or the way you want that crowd to move, or the way you want to educate them when you're playing for them. So and when you grow up in Canada and specifically around Toronto, you're around so many different cultures that you start to see the crossovers of where Caribbean music mixes with Latino music and where Latino music mixes with Arabic music and stuff like that. And so you start to see the trending BPMs and the tempos where you're like, oh, these guys share a similar rhythm, but they might use a different type of drum snare than this one and stuff. So for me, it's almost like cooking where you're just blending different spices. You're blending Caribbean food with Indian food and things like that. And you're trying to take the listener, the dancer specifically, on a ride where you're blending these different cultural rhythms so that they don't even fully know why they like what they're listening to. But you're like, well, I know why you like it, because it's a little bit Caribbean, it's a little bit of Mexican with a little bit of hip hop, with a little bit of
Familiar.
soul, familiar things, and we're mixing up this way. So, sorry, what was your original question? I forget now.
Yeah, I mean, it was very abstract and a little long-winded.
Yeah.
How, with this new album, how does this feel different for you? And you've been
Oh,
touching on it versus, the things y'all have been doing in the past. What is, what was some of the inspiration and how does it feel different?
so I think, yeah, we kind of came to kind of understand where we are now. You have to kind of understand where we came from, because we did come from, the last few years we were kind of in that trap soul kind of
I remember the
boom.
trap days for sure.
Yeah, and that was a really cool culture for a while. And then for us, it kind of went into a lane that we didn't really enjoy. And we knew that we kind of had to get out of there. And what was the cool thing when it first started, that scene was, I think we all witnessed what it's like to be part of an emerging culture where everyone's feeling it at the same time and everyone's moving the same way. And we really took to that because at one point you kind of felt like there was a really beautiful pocket of purity in that scene for the first 3 to 5 years of it. And then it kind of got marginalized and went too much corporate and stuff. And we started losing interest in it. And we were kind of in no man's land the last 2 albums, swimming through, just making our own ideas, kind of blending genres, doing the 110 BPM, mixing with trap, doing a little bit of house. And we were kind of swimming and kind of looking for something, at least the way that I saw it, we were kind of looking for another culture, another home to live in. And we're also maturing and getting older. And we knew that we didn't want to make this like raging, kind of heavy kind of sounding music. And then as we started, going out, we started this party called the Odd Soul Party, which is a separate brand that we have, that was kind of bringing in more DJs that we thought were kind of outside the box of everything. And we were starting to do these parties in New York and in Toronto. And in those parties, we were inviting, we had house DJs, we had piano DJs, we had Afrobeat DJs, things like that. And our set was much different there. Greg would go and he'd be like, hey, I'm going to play an hour set. I'm just going to dig and find music I like. And you go find an hour set and dig and find music you like. Let's just go on stage and play it together. And then through that, we started hearing both of our tastes and kind of how we do things. And I got to kind of experience how you can blend, again, all these different ways of doing things and mixing that with Amapiano, mixing that with Afrobeat, mixing that with classic house, and seeing how if you do it right, all these people would still respond to it well. And within that community of the house world, I again started to feel that love again, but on a level that was classy and mature and kind of at the age that we wanted to party at, and it wasn't always like, yeah. It was more like, you know, chill, and
Like
sometimes there'd
shoulders
be, you
versus
know,
like head
yeah, like
banging.
just, yeah, like just take your time with it, and just
Right.
enjoy it. But still the energy was like, was pure. And
Mhm.
so, you know, for us, it shaped it like, where do you, you know, as you're getting older and as you're maturing, where do you want to spend your time as a DJ? And we're like, we want to be in that space. We want to be in that world. And we want to pull people in with our own sound with it. So it really started with just playing these shows and just being like, what makes me happy, and what makes the crowd happy, and what kind of people do I want to see in that crowd. And you know, and how do we, you know, we play so many shows, we're just like, we always need to be in front of the crowds of the people that we want, and always be telling a story and pushing things forward. So I think that's where it started for us. And like Greg said, like we just kept pushing the BPM higher to kind of see what would work. And then we found that sweet spot, and we're like, wow, within this pocket, there's so many spices you can use to
I
keep
mean,
people
I can
going.
stay at 125 for like 4 hours
Yeah,
easy.
it's it's
Yeah,
it's
I love
ridiculous. Like, it's
Uh-huh.
absolutely ridiculous, you know? And then we were finding, even just the way you blend the songs at that tempo versus the way we used to do it was a whole different thing. And you know, and it's just almost like a trance tempo that, like you said, like it's a word, like it's like everyone around the world understands that tempo.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
with that, you can listen to music from all around the world and get someone's take on something within that tempo, and then
Mhm.
learn from it, right? So it's just endless. And that for us was something kind of very new, because with the last kind of community and genre we were in with trap, it felt like it was only kind of held to a few markets around the world, and
Mm.
you know, here, Australia, parts of Europe and stuff. But it was also, towards the end, the music wasn't expanding anymore. It was almost getting smaller and becoming more kind of
Mm.
like dumbed down. Whereas with house music, we're just like, wow, like we've just found a market that is just always expanding and reaching more and more places. And so it's just exciting, because like, as you said, there's like a, like just the possibilities are endless.
Mhm.
Yeah. You know, house music is all about love. So, I mean, it is so much fun that I think, you know, when you play it, everyone enjoys themselves, everyone feels that love. And so, you know, happy that you've found yourself in the house music world. So, welcome to the house
Mm.
music world. Talk to me about how you learned about house music. And did you know it was a Chicago birth genre?
Yeah, like I did coming up, but again, like I feel like that, like the 80s movement of the Chicago house stuff was like, just it was before my time. So it's like I came into it in very much, and it could have also just been what was being played a lot around me was like a lot of the New York stuff was the stuff that was hitting me at the time. And I think spoke to me texturally too, because the New York stuff, like I know the Chicago stuff started with disco edits, and then like it evolved into synths and like the Larry Heard vibes and stuff like that, and all that stuff. But it's like there was something about the way the New York guys were layering drums and chopping samples that just felt like it was like an olive branch from hip hop to me. You know what I mean? It was like it
Mhm.
just grabbed me, because I was like, this sounds like hip hop, like it was made from a hip hop perspective. And I think that's what we like identify with a lot about the New York stuff, is because we're very much outsiders to house music. Like I see like whatever exposure and like love for it I have, I still don't feel like I really grew up in the house music scene, like as an inner, you know, person in it. So I feel like an outsider. I think we all do. And I think we bring this other kind of perspective to it that's kind of hip hop influenced. And when I listen back to the 90s stuff, and even when I was listening to it at the time, that was my impression of it. I was like, this sounds like guys that could also just easily be making stuff like alongside Premier and like Lord Finesse and like these guys, but they're like choosing to do this instead. You know what I mean? Or choosing to
Mhm.
mostly do this.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean, I think my experience was kind of like what I talked about before. It was like all that peripheral stuff. It was like the record store, ending up in clubs. I was also performing at raves because I was like a turntablist, and I was like a competitive turntablist. I was winning like DMC and ITF competitions and stuff. And then so I would get booked at huge raves to like play in the drum and bass room. And drum and bass was like really cool at the time, but I was like kind of particular about, and it wasn't even called drum bass, it was called jungle at the time. And
Right. Right.
it wasn't all totally my thing. So I would normally end up in the house room after because that was more my vibe.
Yeah.
So yeah, like just stuff like that, it was all like peripheral. But it's kind of cool coming into it with, I still feel like I'm learning stuff every day about it, like new stuff about it every day. Um, and I really do like the approach to being maybe a little bit like naive of some of the stuff, because I think that's just our perspective and that's our approach, and it's going to be a different approach than somebody else's to it. Like we're trying to approach it with all the like love and respect and care that we have, but like also knowing that we're just like not, we're not going to pretend to be insiders, and like we're not going to pretend to be legitimate in ways we're not. I'm going to tell you how outsiderish we are and be very transparent about that, because I mean, I think the music will speak for itself, and like our perspective on it is that, that's what we bring to the table, like it or not.
Matisse.
Yeah, for me again, it's like there's two things, like the pre-parties, and I guess I'm always people first. I look at music as literally the soundtrack to people's lives and how people celebrate. And I just remember in the 90s, again, if you went to my friends' pre-parties before we go to a club, it's smoked out, it's hoods, it's ciphers, it's rap, it's grimy, it's like, yo, what up? And like everyone's just like hard. And like if I meet a new group of guys, it's like I gotta like, you can't smile right away or something. Like you're like, yo, like, okay. And it's like, oh, you like this? Yeah, I like, oh, like Mobb Deep. Yeah, I like Mobb Deep too. Whatever. It's like, all right. And you're just kind of there. And like 40 minutes into being around that guy, you might start to have a conversation. And then 50 minutes into that, you might look him in the eye. You know what I mean? It's like at that point. Versus I go out with some girl who's pre-partying at her friend's house and they're playing house music in the back. And I come to this door and everyone's like, hey, what's up? Come on in. This is my friend Jeff. This is my friend Corey. This is my friend Amy. This is my friend Becky. This is my friend this and this and this is everyone. Come on in. We're all feeling good. You want something? You want to drink? Hey guys, this is Matisse, whatever. And everyone's super happy. And I'm almost out of my element because I'm like, yo, this is something's wrong here. Like everyone's too happy. And then the other thing was when you go to a hip hop club, the DJ like has to play a song that everybody knows all the time. Like you go to a club and the DJ is literally what they play is every single banger that you know. And you go to a house club, it's like they play everything you don't know, and you just go along for the ride.
And they're playing it for like 5 minutes.
And you're playing for
like
a ride.
And that's like 2 minutes, and they're cutting.
Yeah. So hip hop clubs, you go there and the DJ at the end of the night is you're going to hear the hits that you've heard every day. And if they play anything outside of that, you're almost like, yo, your people aren't there to hear that. Whereas you go to these house parties and people are just there to hear what the DJ decides to play them. And there might be 1 or 2 or 3 anthems that everyone knows, but the rest of it's just like, they're just vibing. And I remember like, that was something very interesting to me because it's such a different, it was the first time I ever heard of the concept of like you being a producer or DJing, people actually just coming to hear what you decide to play, not coming that you have to just play what everyone else expecting to play, so that was just as an outsider, just observing different cultures. I found those two things strange at first, but then as I started, I remember Greg one time mentioning that back then when we were playing hip hop and gravitating, he's like, I really want to just play to crowds that are just down to just hear what we have to play and what we have to say instead of having to do these remixes and flips that are like, oh, we're playing the Fugees, we're playing, Nas, we're playing Jay-Z, we're playing this. And if we don't play that, they're kind of bored, so that openness to just let the DJ come in and just play what they play and people go nuts and they keep dancing. I think that was what really drew me to that culture. And then all the years we played music festivals, learning about festival culture in the US, which for a Canadian guy growing up in London, Ontario, no one would have I would have never gone to any of these. And that idea of people going from one festival stage, meeting up with another group of people and going to another festival stage, then meeting up with a bunch of people and all that kind of flowing, I was just like, what is this? I understood now why people, why they save up their whole life, their whole year to go to Coachella or to go to this forest in the middle of nowhere. And sometimes I'd come back and I would go to these clubs back to hip hop and I'd be trying to be smiley to all my boys because I come from this festival scene and my boys would be like, yo, why are you so happy? And I'd be like, oh yeah, I got to go back to the hip hop thing and be like, I got to. And so it's a really funny juxtaposition of like the two different cultures. And I never really, it's obvious when you say it now, but I didn't realize that the whole house culture is all love, because you don't experience that with many other nightclubs, with R&B and hip hop. It's not that energy. So when you get used to it, you don't even know what to call it. And until you just said that, I was like, duh, like, of course, that's what it is. But yeah, until you said that, I didn't realize that was what house music was actually based off of in terms of emotion, but it makes sense because that's what you do feel. You feel the not only the acceptance, but just the love of everyone being there in a pure space. So that's what brought me to it.
It is really refreshing as a DJ to have a dance floor that trusts you. And I think house music really I really like how you brought that up as far as, in the house music dance floors you've been to, that you've spun at, people are there to trust you and just follow along to your rhythms, to your guidance.
Yeah.
And with that, my next question kind of for y'all is, there's three of y'all. How do you balance three creative minds, three creative energies, three different USVs? How do you find, the common ground and collaborating and creativity?
I think just I like there's always like difference of opinions, but I think we just have so much commonality in taste. There's such a like big intersection in our tastes that we kind of look at the three of us as like it's like a filter, like whatever gets made has to go through the filter of the three of us. And then like if it's gone through that, then we all trust it. You know what I mean? So like if I make an idea and like the other two guys aren't feeling it, I don't really trust that idea because it's not through our filter, but if like one of them is really feeling it and the other one's not, I'm like, okay, maybe it's like maybe there's just something missing and to get the other one to like it. You know what I mean? And like our goal is, I think the mantra and the goal of the group is to always feel awesome about everything that we're releasing. Like nobody feels like a winner when somebody doesn't like something, so we like to feel like everybody's psyched about everything. That feels good for our morale. So we're constantly all making ideas like separately and together, sometimes in two, sometimes singular, sometimes the three of us. We're just always making ideas and like we just kind of heartlessly gravitate towards the ones that like excite us all, collectively. And those are the ideas that end up getting finished and demoed on the dance floor. And then the dance floor will tell us, a lot of times. Like I think we rely a lot of, especially more now than ever that we're doing the DJ sets. It's really a constant feedback loop between making demos and testing them on the dance floor. And sometimes when you see a demo that maybe you didn't totally see and you see it work on the dance floor, it sells you on it, or you realize what the missing link with it is. It just needs this thing, or it needs this section, or like the kick just needs to be like hitting harder, or like whatever it is, like all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it's generally like we just try and make tons of ideas and not be too precious and just organically go where the energy is, like where we gravitate towards the demos that just sound fire, regardless. And we don't care who makes what. We're like not precious about that. It's just about like what the most fire stuff is at the time. And this and playing in the constant feedback loop of DJing helps with that so much, because it's like, you can like fantasize about liking an idea all day long, but it's like if you really have to play it, if you have to play that in front of people, that's like the ultimate test, like, do I feel good playing this? You know what I mean? And that's kind of almost like the whiteboard test for us. Like, regardless of how you feel about this, like, is it working? Is it like working on the dance floor? And
there's also to add to that, Greg, sorry, there's also like, there's also a trust that's been carefully forged over, I don't know, we've been together 15 years. We were a live band that got in a van and toured across the US and Canada for like 8 years. So you go through ups and downs of being elated and being miserable together and having to get through that, sleeping in bedrooms, one person sleeping with their head at the other person's foot and
Willy Wonka
sleeping on the
Grandparent
floor.
style, like
Yeah.
yeah.
So, we had the experience of literally being like a small family and traveling together and going through miserable moments and also elation moments and like sharing the same experience together. So we've all been through the getting on each other's nerves and then talking it out and doing all that stuff. And I always think the one lucky thing we got with the three of us is we all seem to be very like level-headed and very introspective, that like if your shit stinks, you'll listen to someone tell you that. No one has that issue where they won't listen even if they're angry. And we also, none of us have any things where someone's missed a gig out of just like, hey, my girlfriend and I just didn't feel like coming. So like we don't have any of those problems where someone doesn't show up to work. We're all pretty like blue collar type of musicians. Like we get up and we just work on the stuff and we pride ourselves in that. So you don't have any of those things where my teammate let me down. So I think that mixed with the fact that, we've just been through the band thing. And if you can exist through a band, as long as we have, like nothing can really stop you after that. So this part's kind of the easy thing, like getting up and just putting a USB stick in a thing. Like when we had 15 bags as a band before and toured with those and, did that, so, I think from that, we've just learned how to be around each other and give each other space. And we know each other pretty much in and out now. So that's why we're able to function the way we do.
Really quick, who played what instrument in the band, or like who was in charge of what?
I played the keys, Greg did turntables, and Toon did the drums.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So you mentioned that, or maybe you mentioned Coachella. I think I read that you all played Coachella. How was that experience? And are there some other festivals that you are looking forward to playing in the future?
Yeah, like Coachella was totally surreal. It was like I think when we were first starting our band, we were like, it'd be amazing to play Coachella. Like it was kind of one of those like naive pipe dream things. And then we actually did it. So it was totally surreal. It was like an amazing crowd. It was like we played the
Sahara stage, right?
Sahara, yeah, thank you.
Tent.
Sahara
Yeah.
tent, which is like a pretty it's like the dance tent, and it's like where Daft Punk really like blew the roof off, and like, so it's just like a legendary dance tent. So it was really cool to do that. I think going forward, like we're not even tripping on the festivals. Like we're down to play festivals, but I think right now we're having fun playing clubs, to be honest, and like incubating our new sound and just working on it. I mean, I think we really want to play festivals, if anything, more overseas, like in like Brazil and South America, and like so, like throughout weird parts of like Europe and stuff like that, maybe Asia and Africa and just different parts of the world. I think we want to get out in North America a little bit. But yeah, I mean, kind of also wide open,
The experience of Coachella, yeah, I just remember us being up there and it's like you're nervous, you're scared, you're exhilarated, you're trying not to mess up your parts, because we played as a band at that one. So you're worried about your equipment not working, you're worried about your fingers freezing up. At least that's my thought process. But you're also like just looking at the crowd and just you can't believe there's, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000 kids at Coachella dancing to your music. You're hoping not to screw up, you're hoping to enjoy the moment. And it's an hour set and it feels like it just goes by like that. Like time stops, like you're just holding your breath and the show's done kind of thing. And yeah, like to speak to Greg, like we did so many festivals and they're a lot of fun. But again, like, a lot of people are seeing us as like they might be coming to us as this is our first rodeo, as like this intention and things like that. But we've had a whole chapter before this of just experiences with festivals. And Red Rocks was another one that we loved playing, which is like we've played that 5 or 6 times and you never get tired of playing Red Rocks. It's in Denver, Colorado. It's up in the mountains for anyone who's listening. It's a natural looking amphitheater. It's got such a history of shows there, and the Denver crowd is they're just such music lovers. They're just there to party. And we've had some amazing amazing memories. You know, like the views from stages are just amazing. Another one, what's the one at the Gorge out in
Yeah,
the west in the Gorge,
Washington
which is
State.
like it's a yeah, Washington State. It's like outside looking over the back, like the backdrop of this amazing, like kind of deep crevice that's naturally, you know, that's almost like looking like you're playing in the Grand Canyon almost thing, and playing a sunset set there, you know, is beautiful. Shambhala up in Vancouver, British Columbia, it's up in the mountains, where you just walk through forests and all of a sudden you wake up and there's like you walk into this open space with a tribal stage and just people dressed up in all their costumes, and it goes on all night, and you're just traveling through this crazy forest in the middle of British Columbia, you know. um you know, even Las Vegas, you know, Life is Beautiful, playing in the middle of Las Vegas down there and playing that festival and being in the heart of like Sin City and having people have this joyful night with you. You know, there's so many moments that are just some of these festivals that they make. What's the one in New York?
Electric Zoo.
No. What's the one that we used to love up in New York area? Forget what it's called. It's that one that's like Electric Forest.
Oh, that's in
Um,
Michigan.
is that Michigan? Yeah, Michigan. That one is like they take this big forest area, like massive size, and they just light it up with all these different decorations. And it's like this playground that you walk through in the middle of the day and the middle of the night, all night. And I think that was some of the things that the peripheral, like when you go to these concerts, is not only just playing them, but when you walk around and experience the kind of creativity and the things that go on that music connects people to. Um, that is kind of, you know, for me what festivals meant. And if we get to do that again in some other parts of the world, we went to Tomorrowland in Belgium, which was like, I don't know, it was like the biggest thing I've ever seen in my life, like what they did down there. And it was just an amazing immersive experience. And I think there's bigger ones across Europe and across, you know, South America too. So if we get to do those, that'd be great. But as Greg said, playing clubs at 1 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock is also just a good life.
Matisse, Greg, y'all have been so wonderful to chat with. We don't want to take up too much of your time, so I do only have one last question for y'all. In, you know, speaking of the album, I want to, okay, Stevie, I'm sorry, my cat is like, hello, it's dinner time. What is your favorite track on the album and why? You know, you have some heavy hitters on there. We got Sierra, we got Lion Babe, we have some really great additions. What is your favorite track and why is it your favorite track?
For me, it changes like every day or every few days, but right today it's the Dana Williams one. I Can't Make You Love. I Can't Make You
Mhm.
Love Me, which is I think it's track 2. Yeah, I just like love that it's got like, I don't know, just the texture of the beat is really like interesting to me, like with the sticks on the snare, and it's just, it feels very tribal and hypnotic. And then
And her voice,
her
like just
voice sounds so crazy on it. It's just like, yeah, and it was really cool making that with her because she's kind of more jazzy than that track would have you believe, but I feel like she sounds just like really restrained and like popping on that track in like a great way that's still like completely it honors like how good of a singer she is as well. It just sounds like a really dope restrained version of her. um and it just gives me, I don't know, it just gives me like sassy, like Janet Jackson energy kind of thing, you know. It's like I feel like you could play that in a room with like Janet Jackson there and she'd be like, I like this, you know, like at least that's like my fantasy, quote unquote. So yeah, today it's that one for me.
Yeah, mine rotate probably between, I think there's four. I'll just kind of go over them. Higher for me is one because it brings me back to church and gospel. There's a spirituality to it in there, what I think we snuck in, which
Mhm.
I really like that we're able to sneak that in into a house track and bring that gospel kind of Southern Church Baptist kind of like feel. Um, that's one. Overdrive with Lion Babe, I think we achieved something really melodically kind of um profound there. It's just deep, and the way it just makes you feel like when we play it live and people hear it, it's like a wash of like I don't know,
Mhm.
just a wash of warmth or something, and like
Mhm.
caramel, I guess I would say as a thing. And I just like what it does when it comes on, and how that the chords and the melody in that one. Um, Feeling Something I really like, just because I like how the three of us made that together and how it came about, and just kind of the what it's saying. And again, I think there's a hint of like, you're here, you're feeling something, there's something in the room, there's an urgency to it.
Mhm.
And then What Girls Do, I think as well, because I think there's something we achieved a very, my parents are Trinidadian Caribbean, and I feel like there's a little bit of soca and calypso in there mixed with the What Girls Do, which I think is kind of like a unifying anthem for women if they want, like we've seen them being shared on social media as that song with women's soccer teams or women doing things with like women empowerment. So I just like the anthem of like What Girls Do, because I think it just is something to bring women together.
Mm.
So I gravitate between those four, and just those ones have a little bit more meaning for me on the album.
That is cool. We gotta dive in deep to this album. I can't wait to do that. Keys and Crates out of Toronto, thank you all so much for being on the Vintage House Show. Please tell the Vintage House Show family how to get in touch with you, your media channels, and how do we get tickets to Soundbar?
Well, so you can go to Keys and Crates on Instagram. That's just Instagram, and then you just put Keys and Crates our name. That's where we kind of if you DM you'll talk to one of us. We're on there all the time. You can
Okay.
go into our bio and our link tree, and we have tickets for all of our shows for the concerts coming up, especially for this weekend. And that would be the best way to get a hold of us.
Awesome. What time are you all on?
I think probably around midnight.
I'll be there. I will be there.
Sick.
So
Yeah,
get some
Come say hi.
rest.
let us know. Come back and say what's up in the green room, and come say
I'm
what's
gonna be
up.
like, they know me. I'm just kidding.
We do
Hit up
know
our
you. You are
peoples.
family now. You are
Yeah.
part of the Vintage House Show fam. So we'll touch base with PR and make sure that Mo Mami is backstage, and then you all are gonna invite her up, all those dream things. You're kind of like,
Hmm.
be on stage with
Yeah.
me, crazy. So,
Gonna cry. Yeah.
shouting everybody out. But we can't
Yeah.
wait to meet you in person. And we look forward to the set. It's going to be a great time in Chicago. You're very lucky. You all know tough weather because you all are from Canada. But I think Chicago's going to be extremely pleasant. So
Oh,
get
that's
ready for
I
the sun.
don't get our hopes up like that. Don't get our hopes up. We hope so. That'd be amazing.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Well, everyone, DJ Momami and Lauren Lowry, thank you all for joining us here on the Vintage House Show. You can catch us at vintagehouseshow.tv, vintagehouseshow.com, and our podcast, and Wednesdays, 10 p.m. on WNUR 89.3 FM and HD1. Thanks again, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you all. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Vintage House Show podcast. Please subscribe and share, and check us out live, WNUR 89.3 FM, Wednesdays at 10 o'clock.